Hello, everyone. This is the Readathon. And I am joined by one of my favorite special guests, or I think at this point, my favorite special guest. Who are we kidding? Mel Barret. Hi, Mel.
Hi.
And of course, you want to remind people how they might know you?
I am Mel Barret, the host of the In Between podcast, which you can listen to wherever you listen to podcasts. First season was a huge deep dive investigation of the Pamela Smart trial and investigation. In between, I'm covering Karen Read, of course, so I'm doing weekly recaps. But I think we can really get the most in-depth analysis here on the Readathon.
Thank you.
And then, I say that because I have been listening to the 82 episodes you've put out, and it helps me sort of figure out what I think in my brain. And so it's great. And then season 2 is going to be coming out in summerish.
It's very exciting. So, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, we need to talk about something that Kevin and I weren't able to get to in the episode yesterday, which is Jen McCabe on the stand. What she said, what she was like, how the vibe was. But first, I want to talk about something else briefly, and that is Judge Beverly Cannoni's behavior on the bench, not just seen through our eyes, but seen through the eyes of legal professionals who are watching this case, and not necessarily like pro Karen Read people. I saw a former judge in Massachusetts tweeting about her helping witnesses, saying things like, "Do you remember? Did you forget?" as being completely inappropriate. That's not supposed to happen. She's not supposed to question people from the bench. She's not supposed to intervene. She's supposed to sustain objections or not. And, if she does speak from the bench, it's supposed to be things like, "Can you get closer to the mic, please?" And that's like the extent of it. So what have you seen out there?
I'm going to go ahead and agree. I said just before we started recording, I've been watching a lot of lawyers, YouTube lawyer streamers who have been covering the case and who have been talking about it nonstop for the past, few days. And I think it also goes back to the motions hearings and how, for example, how she dealt with Alessi and the defense in like giving them the win that is Arca, I guess, but not really having a choice in the matter. Like she couldn't say no to Arca.
Right.
It would have been appealable. And the way she chastised them in that moment was
ugly.
Kind of gross.
It was ugly.
Yeah, it was really ugly. And what it seems like to me, what it feels like to me, especially with Jen McCabe, not only is she saying, so there's an objection, and before she says sustained or not, she says, yeah, can you answer that? And she's not supposed to be doing that. I know that. The thing that she's doing that takes it a step further, there were a couple of instances when Alan Jackson is asking Jen McCabe questions where she interprets his question and asks the witness. That is not her role, as far as I have heard or understand.
No, it's not.
That he is asking the questions the way that he's asking them, and he is entitled to an answer.
Right.
That's his job. There was that one exchange where she said, "You got your answer, move on." He said, "I actually didn't get my answer." And she said, "Yes, you did. You asked an argumentative question." She responded with an equally argumentative.
Yeah.
She can't weigh into that.
No.
It doesn't matter how he asks the question.
Right.
It's kind of blowing my mind. She's, like I said today, I think I actually was commenting on one of Ellen Marsh's posts where I said she might as well just take off the robe and sit down at the state's table.
Right. And she used to be a defense attorney. So I don't know if she's thinking through that lens or if she's just gotten to the point where this is what she is and does. I'm not sure like what her background on the bench has been like. But one of the things that I noticed about the Jackson cross, and we can now talk about Jen McCabe generally, but sometimes Jen McCabe's obfuscation is the answer. When he says, "If you look at this paper, does it refresh your memory?" And she says, "Well, that's what it says on the paper, but it doesn't refresh my memory."
Right.
He should be able to keep going because the obfuscation is the evidence. And I don't think that either Beverly doesn't understand that or doesn't care or doesn't want that to be the case. But do you think that obfuscation itself is something that the jury should be able to see?
Absolutely. I do have some critiques, not that I'm a lawyer and I should be like, armchair quarterbacking Alan Jackson in any way, but I think he stumbled a little bit yesterday.
Yeah.
And I actually am kind of happy to see that there's a day in between where he's going to be able to regroup and take a different tack, because it's not that Jen McCabe was making him stumble. The judge was making him stumble, is in my opinion.
Yes. And Jen McCabe is a different person this time.
Different person. This is like Jen McCabe's sister, like her nice, happy
this
sister.
is like, okay, so let's talk about it. Jen McCabe is performing very well, considering she has no spine of a story, that the spine of her story has so many holes. She is smiling. Her affect is one of friendly helpfulness. She's not letting herself get rattled. She apologizes when she doesn't know.
Yep.
And she was coached really well. Her affect is great. And I think Alan Jackson did score some points, if you're going to talk about it in that frame, which I don't love, but I'll think of another analogy. But he needs to regroup to cross-examine this Jen McCabe. Don't you think?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think not only was she coached, and I don't know who she was coached by, and that's obviously my opinion.
Well, she does have a lawyer,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure she did some mock. She was asked by Alan Jackson, did you do any sort of test run Q&A with the prosecutors? And she said no, but I guarantee you she did it with her lawyers.
That's right.
And she might even have like media training at this point.
Yeah, and he can't ask her about her interactions with her lawyer, and he can't even ask her if she has. That's a little out of bounds. So he can't ask her that. Yeah,
yeah. I do think it's smart. I'll say. I thought, when I first heard it, I was like, "Oh, this is a weird and uncomfortable," because the jury isn't supposed to know anything. But right at the start of his cross, he said, "Have you been coached? Have you been talked about? Have you talked about how to change your demeanor from the last trial?" So he let the jury know that this is not the Jen McCabe. Like, this is great that you're seeing her like this, but this is not. So I kind of feel like he actually had an idea that she was going to do that, which I wish he had been a little bit more prepared for it.
Yeah.
But what I will say is, I do think the jury, I hope the jury is smart enough to see that this obfuscation and this, I'm really sorry. No, if it's my memory, I'm just a soccer mom.
How many times did she say, I'm just a regular mom? Oh my gosh.
But I think the jury is going to also hear that she's not answering the question. Right. Simple questions. Did you say this? One of the key points that I think happened is, and I wish that he had pushed, this is one of the areas where I was like, you really should have pushed this a little bit more. Because she can remember with clarity the moment that Karen called her at 5:00 in the morning and woke her out of a dead sleep. Here is exactly what she said. But she can't remember with any kind of clarity a conversation she had 2 weeks ago with Carrie.
That's right.
And I'm exaggerating. That's not what really happened on the stand.
Yeah, but no, that is what happened on the stand. She said, we've met 4 or 5 times talking about the DA's office. I don't remember what we talked about. I think we just did this. This was like, we know that she was there this weekend. We know that because unfortunately somebody took a picture of her car outside the office and posted it online. But like, we know she was there like on Saturday for like a long period of time, or Sunday, and or maybe both, who knows. So we know that. And it's like an uncool thing to ask, like, hey, you were here this weekend, right? Because if he's wrong, or if she lies, there's nothing he can do about it. He can't be like, well, I saw your car here. That would be a weird thing to say. I think where he scored the most points, and I'm going to use that analogy, please forgive me, listeners, I do not think this is a sport, but I do think where he did the best and scored the most was his ability to, I think, make it crystal clear that she had been visited by the FBI, which was an issue in the last trial. In the last trial, jurors said that they didn't understand who had hired ARCA and they thought it was an insurance company. I don't think they will think that this time. He referred to them as another law enforcement agency that wasn't the state police or the Canton police. He said, and this is an agency where lying to them in an interview is a crime. Yep. And then he slipped in the word agent a couple of times. And
she got very mad. Bev got very mad about that.
The jurors will know. I mean, they'll be able to draw. And also, Jen McCabe said they look like salesmen. And then, of course, she confessed to lying to them, although she said it was, quote, a mistake because she didn't remember the 5 phone calls she had made in the last 10 minutes.
Can we back up just a few seconds, though?
Of course.
She said it right there on the stand, how easy it is for her to lie.
Right.
Because she lied to them almost 3 times before they got inside of her house, to federal agents. So they come up to her in the parking lot and she thought they were salesmen. She immediately told them that she was her sister, Nicole.
Yeah, at her own house. She said this, right?
No, she said it. She was in the car so they approached her in the car.
Yeah, they rolled up on her, but I thought she had been pulled up to her own house.
She may have been in the street somewhere, but she was a little bit away from the house.
Yeah.
and she thought they were salesmen. So she said, I'm Nicole. And then or maybe it was when they asked her if she was the homeowner.
Right.
If she was Jen McCabe, and she said, I'm sorry, the homeowner's not here.
Right.
The first time she called herself Nicole, they said, are you Jen McCabe? And she said, no, I'm Nicole Albert. Then they came to the door and she said, oh, I'm sorry, the homeowner's not here, which she is the homeowner. And so they probably were like smirking, walking away, and then walked a few feet away and then called her and said, hey, we're federal agents. We really need to talk to you. And then she said, give me 10 minutes. And then she called 5 people, including Brian Albert and including the district attorney's office.
Quote, the witness advocate. That's what she says, but she called the main line of the attorney's office, the district attorney's office. That's a district attorney's office. And the witness advocate, make no mistake, works for Michael Morrissey. This is not a neutral guardian ad litem situation. This is a agent of the state, works for Michael Morrissey, is advocating for witnesses on behalf of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, not on behalf of Jen McCabe. So she is like, well, but it is by extension on behalf of her because that's what she wants. But so even if it was the witness advocate, it doesn't matter. She's still calling the DA's office. I
mean, she and Carrie Roberts have Morrissey on speed dial, it seems like, But in a span of, let's say, 15 minutes, she lied 5 times to federal agents and like that, didn't think about it, like taking breath. Her first instinct was to lie.
Yeah.
And her first instinct was to say that she was her sister, Nicole.
What does that tell you, by the way, about that family? I bet they do that kind of stuff all the time. That's what I'm saying. They probably swap licenses when they're,
I told you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
I told you, my uncles, I think I used my uncles way back.
Yeah.
I said my uncle got pulled over and he said he was my other uncle. And he was like, I don't have my license. I'm this guy. And then my other uncle gets the ticket in the mail.
Yeah.
Like small towns, that's what they do. And they're a big family. That's been established by Jackson. So I took from that, though, wow, this woman doesn't have any issues lying to save herself.
No.
And I hope the jury saw that.
I hope so, too. And if nothing else, if they understand that the FBI visited all these people, because he's going to ask the same questions of Brian Albert. Colin Albert was visited by the FBI. I mean, all of them were. He didn't talk to Carrie Roberts about it. I don't know if she was interviewed by the FBI or not. Maybe she was.
I'm sure she was. She was there.
We have to remember this happened. All these FBI interviews happened in April of 2023. This is not just before the last trial. This is in April of 2023, which is approximately a year after the incident took place and well before Jen McCabe became a nationally known potential spoiler/villain in the Karen Read case. This is well before that. I mean, I think that, Turtle Boy stuff, I don't remember exactly when he started reporting his stuff, but this is before everyone knew who Jen McCabe was. And she can't even hide behind I'm so used to being harassed, people driving by my house that I thought it was that. She can't, because this was so long before that. So I don't want people to get it confused with that, because it wasn't that. And so if nothing else, what jury, I think, will take away is that the FBI is somehow involved. And that only matters when it comes to the ARCA witnesses. It matters so much, don't you think?
I do. I don't know if it only matters for the ARCA witnesses. I think it colors the whole case.
But it matters a lot that they know, maybe draw the line that the FBI hired them and not some pro-Karen Read agency.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, ARCA they're going to be huge witnesses again. And it really depends on, if they bring back Tommy Boy or whatever his name was, Paul.
Yeah.
If they bring him back.
He's on the defense witness list too.
He should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but that's my point. Like,
Tommy Boy.
Yes. That's all I could think of. That's all I could think of. What was his name? Paul. His last name was Paul.
Trooper Paul.
What was his? Trooper Paul.
It's just Trooper Paul.
He's Trooper Paul.
It's probably Paul. No, I'm just kidding. It's not Paul.
I think ARCA is hugely important. And I think ARCA was hugely important in the last trial, but the jury didn't understand their significance. And I think that the defense in general is doing a really great job of letting the jury know that the feds have been involved in this case for a very long time without saying the feds, the FBI. She got very upset when he said agents, though. Whew. But I feel like somebody else in last year's trial slipped. One of the witnesses said, "Oh, you mean the federal investigation?"
Yeah, you mean the FBI agent? Yeah, somebody said that it was one of the young people. It was like a Ryan Nagel-ish type person or something like that.
Yeah. And then I wanted to say one more thing about Bev too. one of the commentary that I heard about her behavior, one of the lawyers said, when they have their sidebars, Alan Jackson really needs to say to her, you need to stop saying what you're saying to the witnesses and to the jury because you are coloring the jury against me.
You're creating reversible errors is what she's doing.
Yes. The lawyers are saying, Alan, you have to say this to her because she is really stepping in it. And then all the way up until the end, she got upset with him because he was pushing questioning. That's his right.
It's his job.
He has to defend his client. It's his job.
Right.
Not his right, his job. And she goes, okay, that's it. We're done. And she stands up and dismisses the jury. How does the jury read that?
Yeah. Like he's abusing this poor witness or something, or that.
That's it. We're done. She stood up.
I think that jury would assume that the judge has some knowledge they don't have, right? Just because she's always saying, we have some business to take care of when you're out of the room, such as admonishing Paul O'Keefe for shitting on Karen Reed every time she walks to a sidebar, which I think was the issue. I think that I have come to realize the issue with Paul O'Keefe was a court officer probably said something to the judge. That she will listen to jurors and she will listen to the court officer. She does not give a shit if the defense attorneys say that Paul O'Keefe is harassing them, I don't think, but she does listen to her court officer.
But Paul was sitting there the whole time mumbling shit under his breath at Karen.
Right.
I mean, what a crazy setup for a courtroom.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
The victim's family sitting next to, within a foot of the defendant.
Looking at the jury.
I'm like, this whole thing is just so
It's
screwy.
really messed up. All right, so let's talk about a couple other things that Jen McCabe talked about on the stand.
Yes.
As we mentioned, he asked her about her family, and she spent a very long time laying the foundation that she's a sports mom, a regular mom. She drives to games. Our whole weekend is games.
She's the cool mom.
She's the cool mom. It's her whole, like I said in the podcast earlier, it is her whole, the identity she wants people to see. The whole identity is this nice, cool mom, which is what makes it so funny when she's so comfortably like, yeah, Carrie told her to shut the fuck up. I'm like, oh, hey, mom, how you doing? But, one of the stories that she told that really stuck out to me, and I see it stuck out to you too in your notes, and I'm so glad, is her new clarity of memory about after they found John O'Keefe on the lawn and all the first responders had come and then he had been taken away, that she walked into her sister's house, walked up the stairs, went into the bedroom and sort of, quote, calmly woke them up, when in the past she had talked about bursting in. She had talked about being hysterical.
So did they.
Yeah.
That's what they testified to.
And her whole memory now about not even remembering the existence of a dog. Very interesting. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that was one of my big notes too, because I remember specifically Nicole and Brian Albert testifying that Jen ran in and was hysterical and like shook them awake and blah, 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 blah. Well, first of all, let's go back just a little bit. Something I didn't actually catch from the last trial, and I don't remember if it was in there or not, but the idea that a police officer asked a witness to a crime or what could be a crime or even an accidental death to go into the house where the body is laying on the front yard, and even if they are family members or not, will you go into that house and go wake them up and let them know what's going on? I mean, what kind of Keystone Cops? What are we doing here, people?
I don't know.
And so the door's unlocked, which is another thing. The door's unlocked, but I grew up in rural New Hampshire. We never locked our doors. I get it.
He is a cop, and that's the other thing.
Cop.
The door being unlocked thing,
it's
like
different.
really, I guess.
But you know what that tells me actually, because people in that area, they lock their doors nowadays.
Yeah.
What that tells me is he thinks he's untouchable. What that tells me is if someone walks into his house, he's going to take care of it.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads to other things that we'll talk about, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But so Jen walks into the house. She calmly goes up the stairs. She knocks on the door. That's a new one. And she walks into the bedroom and she says, Brian, Brian, not like freaking out, Brian, Brian. What I find interesting is every time she talks about her own frenetic energy that morning, she does the same thing that she says Karen did, which is Jen, Jen, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, Brian, Brian, Nicole. She's doing the same thing that she's accusing Karen of. But yeah, this year it was a more calm, but that goes along with the 911 call.
Yes.
When Brennan asked her the other day, well, why'd you say it was just a guy on the lawn? And she's like, I was trying to be very calm. I was trying to just give details. I was I'm calm soccer mom, Jen McCabe. And now she's going with that, even all the way into the Alberts' house to wake them up. Mm-hmm. Completely different from what she said last year and completely different from what the witnesses said.
Yeah.
I want to know, when Nicole and Brian get on the stand, are they going to change their story too?
Right. Like I said, Jen McCabe has clearly had a lot of training. Although I'll also a makeover, by the way. We should I know that I couldn't
the
really
bronzer.
talk. There's so much bronzer. And at one point I texted you and I was like, blotchy chin alert.
That was one of my favorites.
One of the things that people have noted is that when she gets upset or might be not telling the truth, that she would get these red blotches on her face. And she's wearing so much bronzer that you can't see it. But there was this one spot on her chin where this little alarm popped out, which was interesting. Yeah, so I think that's all designed to make a softer, prettier, teeth-whitened Jen McCabe appearance.
That's why
right?
I think media training as well as her lawyer. I don't think that's just her lawyer. I think that's the media training.
Because she looks like a TV person in this trial. So one of the things that I would like to talk about, speaking of her mannerisms, affect, etc. Now, keep in mind, I've said so many times on my stupid podcast, like, I don't like to talk about the way women look, their mannerisms, their affect, whatever. It matters when you are a witness in a case who many people believe is lying. You do pay attention to those cues. It also matters when you're
the defendant. Right. I hate to say that, but because of the way our jury system works.
Of course, it matters. It matters. And I'm not thinking about what I think. I'm thinking about what the jury might be thinking. That's the lens that I am talking about this through. So keep that in mind. How many times did she look at Brennan before answering a question? She would say nothing. She would look at Brennan. And he would either object or not object. But you could tell she was prepared at the end of every question to not answer and be rescued by Brennan. Yes or no?
Absolutely. And it was getting a little bit weird. She was doing it to the jury, though, too. I don't know if you noticed that.
Every time she wanted them to remember something, which to me is also like stressing a point that may not be true. Like I walked in calmly. Like she was exactly right.
It was really good. It was really good. But she wasn't just doing it then. When she was waiting for Brennan to object and she's looking directly at Brennan while they're having sidebars, whatever, she's actually communicating with the jury. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed it, but she would turn back to the jury. And I feel like at one point she like shrugged her shoulders a little bit.
Like, can you believe this is happening to me?
Can you believe that they're treating me this way? I'm just
like you. I'm a regular mom, just like you.
Regular mom. Don't you have peanut butter and bread in your car?
Yeah, the FBI visits me and I think it's like an ice cream truck. I don't know. I'm just a regular mom. What a funny
she said that about Memory, the ice cream truck.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm talking about Memory. This is when she was like, we're just arguing over silly little words,
Oh
Mr.
my
Jackson.
God, that was an amazing moment. Another amazing moment was when, that I haven't seen a lot of people pick up on, she was talking about Julie Nagel, I believe, and she said, well, she wasn't involved. I mean, what happened inside the house was different than what happened outside the house. And I'm like, we need to pause a second on the she wasn't involved thing. Not involved in what, might I ask?
Well, she also called her Memory and her, she called it her story.
Right.
And he was like, so wait a minute, you just said you told a story. And she's like, it wasn't a story, Mr. Jackson. It is what happened.
Yes. And she will remember for the rest of her life that Karen Read said, I hit him, even though she did not remember it that way in her police interviews, her FBI interview, her grand jury testimony. She only remembered it later.
But Proctor and everybody else that took those statements got it wrong.
Yeah, they're just everyone's throwing Proctor under the bus. Have you noticed that in this trial so far?
I think it's actually a tactic now for all these witnesses to be like, I don't know, Proctor did it.
The jury could think at the end that he killed John O'Keefe. Because they're just like, oh, Proctor. He must not have been able to write properly. The whole thing with the Jeep. Okay, so I know I'm jumping all over the place.
Ugh, the Jeep.
The Jeep is so mysterious.
You're talking about Higgins' Jeep.
Yes. So for those audience members who don't know, there are only a few people, including the Alberts and the McCabes, who have testified and said multiple times that Brian Higgins' white Jeep was parked in front of the mailbox at 34 Fairview. Right. He says it's gray, light gray, but they call it white. And keep in mind, that's right next to the driveway. So there's the driveway, the mailbox, and then the main part of the lawn. And they say that his Jeep was placed there. Nobody else puts it there. And that's important for a couple of reasons. It could be because Ryan Nagel said he pulled up behind Karen Read's SUV in his last testimony and only saw one person in the car. And this is a way to make it so he can't have pulled up behind Karen Read. So that's one theory. Another theory is his car was elsewhere that would have been shadier, like maybe hidden around the corner, and people want to put it back at the house. And a third theory, which is a very simple theory, which I kind of also buy, is that maybe he had his work car and people don't want people to know that he had his work car. He had his personal car instead. So what do you think of the Jeep mystery? Because he asked about that Jeep many times.
Yeah, I think it's a weird thing to be caught up on, mainly because we know Higgins was there. We know when he left. We know he drove himself there. Whether it was in the Jeep, I mean, I can understand why Higgins wouldn't want anyone to think he was in his cop car, because that's one of the things that got Proctor fired, was that he was drinking in his actual cop car.
Right.
So if he actually drove his cop car there and was drunk, then he could get fired for that. So I think that might be one of the sticking points. They have very strange sticking points. I'm looking at it this way. If Higgins is parked just after the mailbox, which is just after the driveway, and Karen is parked, let's say near the flagpole, there's still that space, a little bit of space in between for another car to pull in, I think, based on the space. I think they're creating an issue that doesn't necessarily need to be there.
Right. Except that if you think about it, the number of times these people talk and what they talk all the time, they talk 100 times a day. They have had to come up with things to explain every detail. They've had to. One of the things that I find very interesting, and I said this briefly yesterday, but I can't stop thinking about Jen McCabe claiming she walked in the front door of the house instead of the side door of the house when she parked in the driveway. You lived in New England. Did you ever live in or see one of those houses that had both it's a garage side door. It's not a side door on the side of the house, in the front of the house, but off to the side.
My grandmother's house.
We have one. We have a door right next to our garage, and then a front door. And there's only lawn in front of our front door, just like their house. There's no sidewalk up the middle of the lawn like there is on Long Island. So to walk in the front door, you have to walk across the grass. And your feet get dirty and whatever. Nobody uses their front doors in my neighborhood. No one. That's not a thing. So why would she in the snow get out of her car, which was right next to a door, and then walk across a snowy lawn to the front door to let herself in? I'm not saying I know for sure it's a lie. It just seems like a weird thing to me.
That house is set up a little bit strange. Like where the front door is so close to the side door and so close to the garage door, which I cannot believe we haven't really talked about the garage until just now.
We're gonna.
No, but why didn't this come up in the last trial? But anyway, my grandmother's front door was for decoration. She put a couch in front of it on the inside. No one used it. We came in through the garage.
Yeah.
We came in through the breezeway. There was a door on the side of the garage. You walked in the garage and then you went in the side where the breezeway was.
And that's what this is. This is a breezeway connecting the kitchen family room area from the garage. So when you get out of when you get out of your car in the garage, you walk through this little hallway. You have the side door, what they're calling the side door, would be on your left as you walk into the kitchen. So if you walk in that door, if you go right, you're going to the garage. If you go left, you're going into the house. And there's just like that little space there. It's not like walking into a room.
Yeah. I wonder how many feet it is to get to the interior door in the breezeway to the garage.
Maybe about 85, perhaps?
About 84, 85.
Meters? How many meters is it, though? This is America. We talk about feet here.
This is America. It's feet here.
Did you catch the moment where Alan Jackson was asking Jen McCabe to use the laser pointer to point at the different doors of the house? And he said, "Can you point at the door going into the garage?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, look at that. There it is." As if she had never noticed it before.
I put this in my notes because she was like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's a garage door there.
Can't believe it.
It was so forced, and so I immediately was like, whoa, that garage door. Like that was my.
And this was after I came up with my garage theory, so I felt very gratified when it seemed like she was weird about the garage door.
Yep.
What do you think about that? This idea that the garage could be in play, because the defense seems to be bringing the garage up. To me, it aligns with a lot of the phone temperature stuff, because as we know, garage is cold, but not as cold as the outside. So could the garage be in play?
Absolutely. And I think the defense didn't even realize the garage could be in play until the prosecution gave them their battery temperature data.
Right.
And then they went, well, what would be, I'm sure it was a lessee too, what would be a reason for the temp to drop only this little bit, only to drop even a little bit further? It couldn't be the basement because the basement's finished. Like
unless
we talked about that the other day.
Bulkhead part of the basement outside the inner door and inside the outer door.
The bulkhead's on the other side of the house, is it not?
Right.
Or
it's
is it
in the basement.
No,
it's in the back of the house. It's in the basement. And there's an inner door. I mean, this is how all bulkheads are. But there's an inner door that is the room door. And then there's you open that. There's a set of like usually concrete stairs. And then there's that weird flat door that you open up that looks like a,
hatch.
Exactly, like the hatch in Lost. And so that's another space that I thought about because I know that there was some testing done in there. I've heard that there was some testing done in there, so who knows?
Well, the FBI was looking into the basement because they were looking into the removal of the carpet and all that stuff. So they probably also wanted to test the bulkhead. We should back up a little bit, though, because something that I realized in my first season of my podcast, No one knows what a bulkhead is.
Yeah.
It's a New England thing.
It is.
So I had to like go
like a
into
breezeway.
depth.
Not everyone knows what a
Yeah.
breezeway is.
Exactly.
Not everyone knows what a mudroom is unless they watch HGTV all the time. Yeah.
But basically, just so the audience understands, it's an exterior entryway to the basement that is usually locked from the inside, first of all. And it looks like a big hatch on the ground that you open up. You go, like Rebecca said, you go down a set of steps, and then there's like a door into the basement. That door closes and locks usually from the inside, and that's how you get into the basement. So the idea, just going back to what we were talking about, positing how John may have passed away. I've always found it a little bit of a stretch to think that this happened in the basement.
Same.
Even though the carpet was removed, even though the dog was running around, even all of those things, because it would have taken John far too long and he would have been seen by far too many people in order for him to get into the basement.
Agreed.
Whether he went around to go to the bulkhead or whether he went inside and then immediately went downstairs, it didn't fit for me because then they would have to physically pick him up, walk him outside, if that's what we're positing happened.
Out the back, around the house. Yeah.
Where'd the Ford Edge come from? Yada, yada.
Yeah.
As soon as the garage was mentioned and the temperature of the cell phone was mentioned, my immediate thought was he was in the garage.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there people have thrown out this, and it sounds like a wild idea. It does. People have thrown out this idea that Brian Higgins went to the police station to get a Faraday bag, which is something apparently that they use all the time. I don't know. He's also a federal officer. So I think that's important to remember is he's a federal agent in an agency that knows a lot about phone stuff. That's how he knew to go to that guy to ask him about the phone extraction. And, so is Brian Albert. Brian Albert was a high level police detective in the Boston Police Department. And, being able to keep phone movement from being detected is something that they would know how to do. I don't know if they did it or not. It's just something I think that they would know how to do.
You want to explain what a Faraday bag is? Because I think there's a lot of people that don't know what that is either.
A Faraday bag or a Faraday cage or a Faraday anything is a box or bag or cage or container in which you can put an electronic device, and it basically keeps it from knowing the outside world and keeps the outside world from influencing the device. That's the easiest way to put it. It sort of blocks electromagnetic stuff. That's
it. A lot of preppers think of Faraday cages because it will protect your phone and your devices from an electromagnetic pulse.
Right.
But it can be used in the reverse as well.
Right. And I wonder if it's used, I think that they are sometimes used for evidence. When they collect phones, they put them in a Faraday bag so that there will be a... So that's why there would be Faraday bags at the police station, because if you arrest somebody and you take your phone, you basically want to freeze it as it was and just say, no, this couldn't have been interfered with, whatever. It was in this sealed thing. And, so my car ride or whatever doesn't influence the iPhone because it's in this thing. So that's the reason why they think that there may have been a Faraday bag in play.
Can you imagine if they had Faraday bags but not evidence collection bags?
Not in the troopers' cars. They don't. Isn't that wild?
No.
It's so strange. What else do you want to talk about Jen McCabe's testimony?
As far as Jen McCabe's testimony, toward the end of the day, she started to lose her composure.
In what way?
So it was getting to that everybody started losing their composure. Bev, Jen, AJ, everybody. It got to the point where he was asking for simple questions. We talked about this briefly before, but he was asking for sort of simple things like, I heard it put this way. A lawyer was saying, you hand the witness a piece of paper that has the answer that you want on it. And all they have to do is verify they said it. And that is the answer to the question. And at the end of the day, she wouldn't even do that. She wouldn't even say, she would say, yeah, this refreshes my memory, but I'm not sure I said it.
It seems like something I may have said in the moment. She was walking around that stuff. What did you think of him asking her about having Julie Nagel send her a screenshot that proved when Ryan Nagel showed up at the house? I mean, when people talk about how it's insane that these people could collude to such detail, think about that. She asked somebody that she says she didn't know that well to send a screenshot from her phone that proved when Ryan Nagel showed up at the house, because Ryan Nagel showing up is like an important landmark.
Yeah.
Instead of just guesstimating it, instead of just she was like, I need the screenshot. That is fucking weird.
It's weird, except for that is, I think it's right in line with how Jen McCabe acts in this situation.
Sure.
We've talked about this in the past. Do I think that Jen McCabe is the mastermind of all this? No, I don't. I do think she's a crazy soccer mom. And I don't mean that in I don't think soccer moms are crazy, But I think this one in particular wants to control everything.
Yes.
That's why she calls everybody. That's why she makes sure Carrie knows what she's supposed to say.
That's why she's vetting basketball leagues to make sure it's good enough for her kid.
2:30 in the morning, she's like, I've got to respond to this because they want my kid to play basketball, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's the way her brain works. It's her MO. It is her functioning in the world. She has to be in control of the narrative, and she has to be in control of the information. And if she doesn't have the information, she probably experiences a ton of anxiety.
Yes.
And so that's why she made those 5 calls when the feds asked her to talk.
Right.
And she said, I need 10 minutes to brush my
including
teeth.
to the mastermind of this, Brian Albert. Not Jen McCabe. It is, and it's in many ways, it's very, very sexist that she's been framed as the arch nemesis villain in this. She did obviously shady things, and she's obviously not telling the truth about things she said prior. You know, that's just very, very obvious. But she is not 99.99999% the person who caused whatever injury happened to John O'Keefe and then thought, oh shit, we need to do something, and not, let's call the police. Like, she's not that person.
No, she's collateral damage, kind of.
Yeah.
Obviously, she is the one who's going to ask questions. Obviously, she's a talker. I mean, that at the end of the day, she and Carrie, I'm surprised they weren't friends before, because they're very similar. Yeah, they're both talkers. I know these women.
Yeah.
Like my grandmother, my mother, they'd have to get to the bottom of a story.
Yeah.
And they'd have to back it up with proof.
These are the kind of women that wouldn't be friends with me when my kids were in elementary school. I live in a town that's it's much, much, much smaller than Canton, only like 6,000 people, but like there's a clique of moms that are always like, they just came from working with their personal trainer or from yoga, and they all know each other, and they're all really beautiful, and they all drive really expensive cars. And if you approach them and talk to them, it's like they're nice, but with like a lot of sus in the voice. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get the sense they're going to be inviting you to their next book club meeting, if you know what I mean. She's like, she definitely fits, and so does Carrie, that archetype, I think. And it's not a sexist archetype, I don't think, because it's true. Like, it happens in our towns.
Jen grew up in Canton. She was born and raised in Canton. Yep. She went to high school in Canton. She was the cool girl at Canton High, and she never got out of that mode. She became the cool mom who has 4 daughters, and they're all super successful, and they always have their peanut butter sandwiches when they need them. And she's on top of it. And she's related to the most powerful family in the city. She's the snack mom. She's a snack mom. She brings the oranges, in the Capri Sun. What
did you think of the moment where Alan Jackson handed Jen McCabe the grand jury transcript and said, can you point to where you said, I hit him, and said, you have all the time you need to look through it?
And she's like, it's 200 and some odd pages.
227, ironically.
Oh, that's right. And did you know that she took the stand at 227?
Yes.
Wow.
Whoa, right?
Weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, 227 pages, Mr. Jackson. He's like, take your time. Take your time.
We have all the time in the world. But of course, Bev is like, no, we don't.
Bev steps in. Yeah. Oh, man. She's crazy.
I have a cold bottle of Chardonnay at home with my name on it.
Oh, you think it's Chardonnay? I think it's White Claw.
Oh, it could be.
Maybe Chardonnay.
I think it's Pinot Grigio.
Bev wants to get to the beach house. She wants this to be over with.
Or Sauvignon Blanc. That's kind of the new Chardonnay.
Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that he used that in the last trial. He did the same sort of thing. I think it was a little bit more impactful in this trial because she wasn't being as combative. So like it got lost last year, but here where she's like, it's 227 pages. And he's like, take your time. Mm-hmm. Because his confidence lets the jury know that in not one of those pages did she say, I hit him.
But she did. She'll never forget it for the rest of her life.
The police got it wrong, and so did the FBI, and so did
the transcriptionist for the grand jury.
And so did the transcriptionist. Yeah. So, I mean, that argument, here's my conclusion, I would say, about what we've seen so far, because I think it's going to change a lot tomorrow. I think Jackson's going to come back revamped tomorrow. Mm-hmm. She might too, though. So maybe sometimes I was like lulled by it because I was like, it almost feels like they're working together. Like they're being so nice.
Yeah. She's like, I'm so sorry.
He's getting the answers he wants. And she's like, I don't really care at this point because, as long as Turtle Boy's arrested, everything's fine. Yeah. I'll say whatever you want.
Yeah. Interestingly, I think a couple of things about the jury and their perceptions. I wonder how it plays when somebody needs to see the thing that it says they said and look at it carefully in order to answer every question about what she said it every time.
If she told the truth, she wouldn't need to recall what she had said.
Right.
She would be able to repeat what she had said.
That's right.
And that's my conclusion. My conclusion is that I really hope the jury understands that.
Yes.
That she is very obviously obfuscating.
Yes.
And she is not telling the truth. And even if she has a calm demeanor and she's laughing and saying, I'm sorry, and, being whatever she's being on the stand, I think the jury is also seeing and Bev's not helping with that situation either, because every time she jumps in to try to get an actual answer, the jury's seeing that as well. And they're like, why isn't this woman just saying it's only been a few years and she's testified, obviously, last year, and she's been interviewed by this many cops. Why can't she just say her story by the letter the way she's been saying it for 3 years?
Right.
Instead of being like, I don't know if that's what I said.
Right. So do you think they're trying to get to Caitlin Albert took the dog home with her that night at like 1:30 in the morning?
Do we know where that started? That information?
It all started, the whole dog thing, Chloe not being there the next morning starts because nobody heard her barking the next day. Because Nicole and Brian never came outside. Ostensibly, they were sleeping. I don't think they were. But nobody outside even heard the dog barking. And the dog, and Jen McCabe says when she walked in, the dog didn't react. And this is a reactive dog. And
she doesn't recall seeing the dog in the house anywhere.
And I have not mean, but reactive, like dogs, people arrive. And the UPS guy shows up, like they go freaking bananas. And I wonder how many people on the jury are current or former dog owners who would just in a million years understand the dog could not have been there. If Jen McCabe didn't hear the dog, if she's telling the truth about that, and if the people on the lawn never heard a dog, and if the dog, so let's assume that the dog either was put away somewhere or wasn't there. He asked her, did anybody leave after you? And she said, this isn't the first time she said it. The only person who was still there when I left that didn't live there was Caitlin. So the idea is that Brian may have said, hey, can you take the dog with you home tonight?
But I feel like there's got to be more information about it, because I feel like the accounts that I've read have been so detailed about Caitlin took Chloe back to her fiance's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out the origin of that story, because if it's in fact true, and I hope that they get to the bottom of it, really goes in line with your theory, which I'm hoping we're going to get to. The other thing is that when the cops walked in the door, did they not notice the dog?
You would have to hold a dog back from.
Do you know that one of the things that came out in this trial that wasn't in the last about the dog?
That is part Malinois?
Part Malinois.
I lost my mind when I heard that. Yes, I lost my fucking mind when I heard part Shepherd, part Malinois. I know a lot of people don't know what a Malinois is. I believe it's a Belgian dog.
You have to be trained to own that.
You're
dog.
not like it's in some places not legal to own it, unless, but like it is.
You have to be certified to own it.
It is
sometimes.
the most aggressive, trainable. Yeah. It's like one of the smartest breeds of dogs, athletic breeds of and you'll see videos of a guy holding a ball on a stick 30 feet in the air, and a Malinois will run up the side of a wall, literally, and then leap out, grab the ball, do a backflip, and fall 30 feet to the ground and be fine. And you have to exercise that dog like that every single day, otherwise it will eat your couch and your children. Yeah.
And Chloe is a Malinois mixed with a German Shepherd. Are you kidding me?
I know. That's a
weapon. Been around humans or animals.
That dog's a weapon.
That dog's a weapon. And you're telling me a cop walks into its house, a stranger walks into its house the next morning. Okay, I have a French bulldog. You saw her the other day.
Cutest.
When one of the kids comes downstairs and she hears stairs, immediately a bark.
Yes.
So you're telling me that a guard dog isn't alerting when they hear the door open, the front door open?
Does your dog bark when there's a doorbell on TV? Because mine does.
Oh, yeah. But like, how about when the sirens are on? Somebody said, I forget what I was listening to. Someone was like, well, I know they had the lights on and everybody was screaming outside, but they didn't have sirens on. That's not true. You can hear them in the videos.
Right.
So you're telling me a Malinois German Shepherd isn't freaking the hell out and tearing the curtains off the wall trying to get through that window?
That's right.
To get to the front lawn?
And if it was in a crate, it would be worse.
Oh, that crate
it wouldn't
would
be better.
It
would be worse. They're very, very, very loud, aggressive, athletic, fast, very fast
very
dogs.
Fast. Very fast.
So I would encourage listeners, if you don't know what a Malinois is, look up some YouTube videos. Malinois is how it's spelled, and just look up Malinois, and you will see a bunch of YouTube videos about people with Malinois, usually doing incredibly amazing things, but it will give you a sense of the power of this dog.
So yes, I believe that Chloe was not in the house that night at a certain point and in the morning. I also am worried about my own confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Because I agree with your theory and I agree with what I think I know about this case. And if Chloe's not in the house, then that falls right in line with what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So I'm being very careful about my own confirmation bias, I think.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear, your reaction to what I said in the show yesterday. I'll go over it briefly, and then I'd love to hear if you have anything to add. So my new theory, and this is based on the new data that I've seen, and I've had thoughts like this. I've always thought something stupid happened that was really quick or whatever. But the idea that there is now this whole space that you can walk up to a house, they have deliberately, have you heard them deliberately taking Brian Albert and Brian Higgins away from the party at some point to go look at something? You've heard that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's come up several times. And Jen McCabe's testimony yesterday, it was, they were in the family room looking at pictures. But previous testimony, they have taken them out of that room over and over and over again, maybe going upstairs to look at pictures or whatever.
Brian and Brian were never in the kitchen with everybody else.
And I always think the upstairs thing was weird because I'm like, maybe that's where the steps came from in the phone, but whatever. If there is a door, if Higgins and Albert are standing inside the garage and John O'Keefe either walks up to the house and that exterior garage door maybe was open, or he walked in the side door and the exterior,
he's drunk.
or they say, hey, come here, which I don't think is unlikely. I think that they may have gotten home from the bar, talked about whatever it was Higgins was hot under the collar about, which was probably Karen Reed. And they, come here. Maybe he said something shitty about Karen, and John, he's a big guy, big boy, as Alan Jackson called, a big beefy boy. And then the dog reacted, bit him, and then whatever quick thing happened is when he fell and hit his head on something. They said, oh shit. And people in the house did not know at that point, which is why Jen McCabe sent all those "where the fuck are you" texts and made all those
and
calls.
Kept getting up and looking out the door.
That's right.
That was the other thing. It was her movement. It wasn't just the text.
Right.
It was, she got up 3 times. That is actually something we should talk about. I don't know. Can we, before we get into your theory, which is super interesting to me, but this is something that really stuck out to me in the second half of her testimony yesterday. Jackson establishes that when she gets up and looks out the window, do you remember the part she kept saying, I could see lights in my peripheral vision?
Yes, and she was saying peripheral, which was very fun.
I can't even say it the way she was saying it. But she was seeing lights in her peripheral vision that should have been Nagel's truck, right? Mm-hmm. And then on the 3rd time that she got up, or the 4th time, or whenever it was, and she went to look out, she no longer saw Karen's car. She did see in the roadway, she could see tire tracks in the snow. The tire tracks were right in front of where John's body should have been.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And so Alan Jackson said, okay, so you're telling me you don't have the detail in your head to know what car was to the left. You could only see lights. That's fine. But you're telling me with such certainty and such clarity that you could see tire tracks in the very low dusting of snow that was happening at the time, driving away. And she kept saying, well, it was in the light on the street. You know those street lights.
Yes. They're like a cone. They're a cone of light.
Yeah. And so he goes, okay, but you could see the lines in the street light, but you couldn't see, that's when he called him a big boy, I think, the body of John O'Keefe, who is over 6 feet tall, lying directly in front of those tire tracks in the cone of light. She said, I was looking at the street the way I'm looking at you right now, Mr. Jackson. And he's like, basically you're telling me you can't see the dais in front of you or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And she's like, I was looking at the street the way I'm looking at you. So no, I wasn't looking for a body. But that is amazing testimony that he got out of her.
It is.
To say she was looking at the direct spot where John was supposed to be lying in the snow and could tell you that there were car tracks in the street and how much snow was out there, but that she couldn't tell you that there was a body.
Well, there's also a very simple reason why they keep putting Brian Higgins' Jeep there. It's a very simple theory to that too, is that that's where Karen was. If Karen pulled up to the house and if he got out of the car and walked to the door, the side door, which no one disputes is the door he would have walked into, she would have been in front of the mailboxes.
Yes.
Not Higgins' Jeep. If Higgins' Jeep wasn't there, she would have pulled up. She probably wouldn't have blocked the driveway. She would have pulled up to where she thought she could park, like right in front of the mailbox, because no one gets mail delivery in the middle of the night. If his Jeep wasn't there, that's where she probably was. Not in the middle of the lawn, straight across from the front door and by the flagpole. No fucking way.
Let me make one more argument with that too. And I'm going to come from a woman's perspective. And I'm coming from a woman who is a little bit more masculine than other women. when you pull up to a house party, if there's plenty of parking, do you generally pull up in the deepest part of the snow at
Never.
the end of the yard so that you have to trudge across the yard to get to the house?
Now, you also don't park as far away as you can because you don't want to walk
And it's
night.
dark, like
Yeah.
especially if you were by yourself, you wouldn't, the idea that a woman would park that far all the way down the driveway doesn't make any sense. But anyway, back to your theory.
Yes.
I think it's right. And have you watched the Microdots video about, this is the one about Brian Higgins' movements
Okay.
at the bar.
Okay. So what happened
Do you remember
there?
that one?
No.
Okay, so basically they really cleaned up the video. They show John and Karen come in, one of those high top tables, those long high top tables. Karen is standing if I'm here, Karen's standing opposite. I'm Brian Higgins. Karen's standing opposite of me, John standing next to her. Brian Albert and I think Kevin Albert, I think he was the other one. Or Chris. Was it Chris or Kevin?
Chris.
So Chris and Brian Albert are standing sort of in a trio with Brian Higgins. Conversation goes on. John O'Keefe moves to the other end of the table because that's nearest where the bar is, I think, or there's a bar behind them too. And he goes and he gets drinks. Karen's talking to Jen and like a couple of other women or whatever. The video goes close up on Brian Higgins. He's having conversations with these two dudes and he's constantly turning and looking at her.
Yeah.
They break it down by the timestamp of when he texts her.
Yeah.
And you watch him pull his phone out of his pocket, text her that, wait for a reaction, gets none, puts his phone down, goes back to the conversation. He picks up his phone repeatedly, is looking for a response, doesn't get one. He leans in and starts talking to Brian Albert and Chris, and the three of them start to huddle together.
Yeah.
While John comes back and is next to Karen. And they're having this weird little huddly conversation, right? A few minutes later is when everybody starts to decide to leave. The Bryans are the first, I think, to go, or among the first group to go. And there's this close-up video.
Yes, this is the one I've seen 100 times. Describe it.
Yeah. This is a close-up video of Brian Higgins is pissed off about something. He's like got his chest out. He's pulling his arms back, blah, blah, blah. Brian Albert grabs him by the arm.
I think Chris initially grabs him and then Brian also holds him back.
You might be right.
Yeah.
One of them grabs him by the arm and pulls him back. Brian pulls his arm back and is like about to go.
Yeah, like Popeye style. Like, let me at him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then he gets pulled back again. And then immediately those guys leave.
Yes.
Like there's about to be a problem.
They were hot.
Right?
They were hot.
And then within minutes of that, once they get back to the house, and this goes with your theory, I think they went right to the garage. I'm not even sure. They might have seen Brian Higgins' Jeep out there or his cop car, whatever it might have been. I don't think those guys went into the house because they don't do that kind of shit around the women folk. They went to the garage to like let some steam off.
Yes.
Who knows what was in the garage? I wish I knew. Brian Higgins, within minutes of that whole situation, texts John and says, "Are you guys coming here?" with 3 exclamation points.
Right.
Which I don't think John responded to. And then going through the whole timeline of Karen pulling up. And if you want to bring Whiffin's testimony into it, use his cell phone battery data, use his location data, use all the 5 points that he made. Bottom line is, when John gets out of that car, he takes 84 steps and the house is only 72 or 82 feet. The house is only 72 feet, which puts him 10 feet inside of the property.
Right.
Whether that's the garage or the house or the mudroom into the garage.
Yep.
It puts him in that house. And then from that moment on, the data of the cell phone battery coincides with being in a warm place, going out to a cold place, not really getting much colder because it's being warmed by a body.
Well, also because a garage is warmer than the outside. I mean, I keep our wine in the garage, our extra wine that doesn't fit in our little fridge or whatever, in a garage, in an unplugged wine refrigerator in the garage, because it's like even the dead of winter, if it's 0 degrees outside, the garage is like 35 or whatever.
For Thanksgiving, we take the turkey out, we put it in the garage.
Same. I brine my turkey in the garage.
Yes.
That's right. If I make the sides the day before, I put them in the garage. Mm-hmm. It's a refrigerator, not a freezer. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and I live just outside of DC, so it's obviously a little bit warmer here.
And I live farther north of where they live, so it's a little colder here than it is where they are.
I think your theory might be spot on. And I think that, if we dig down into it a little bit more, because the only question I had for you, which is what I texted you this morning, was, but what about the flights of steps?
Yes.
And then I started thinking about it, and I'm a tennis player, and there are times where I'm playing tennis and I hit a ball really hard. And my watch goes, did you just fall down?
Yeah.
But it also sometimes when I am playing tennis, it records it as flights of steps.
Right.
But depending on whether I'm sprinting, depending on whether I'm flapping my arms around, I'm thinking about the last trial. And in the last trial, they had established that those flights happened well after he would have gotten out of the car. But I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah.
Because I was just looking because then I'm like, well, why did they tear up the carpet? The thing is, what could have happened? I started thinking about this more because I thought, well, maybe the carpet in the basement is just a red herring. But then I started thinking about it. If these guys got into some sort of scuffle in the garage and John threw up, you've brought up that he had vomit in his underwear. He's got a nasty gash on the back of his head. If they were near him, they had blood on them.
Mm-hmm.
If those guys went down into the basement and cleaned up, there'd be blood in the basement.
That's right.
And they would be in the carpet.
Yeah. Yep.
You can clean the garage up easier than the carpet.
The carpet could have been full of dog pee before they sold the house and they wanted to change the carpet. The carpet could be a non-event. The carpet could be a non-factor. Colin could be a non-factor. Maybe,
right.
maybe Colin was in the garage, maybe not, but maybe they are trying to protect him because he'd been in trouble before and they wanted him out of there. They wanted all the kids. I think there was an effort to get all the kids, the so-called kids, away from the scene. I drove Julie Nagel and Sarah Robinson home. So-and-so wasn't there. They left earlier. There's an effort to get the children away from this scene, which I've always found interesting because children usually stay places longer than adults do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. and not, but who knows? These guys are more experienced drinkers than the children. So
I have a couple of questions for you that I need to sort of figure out in my brain. One of them is, well, we've talked about the Ford Edge. So based on your theory, I think you and I have been talking about the fact that the Ford Edge might have actually been in the garage.
Correct. In the other bay.
They might have actually put John's body in the Ford Edge, driven it out to the front of the property, gotten him out of the car and put him there.
Slid it out the back seat.
Slid it out. I want to know where that Ford Edge is, and I want to know if it was obviously it was never forensically tested, but where's the Ford Edge? So that was my first question. My second question is, if it were the Bryans and it happened away from everybody else at the party, how did they get the other adults involved at that point? And what was the story that they told? And then what was the plan? Mm-hmm. Do you have any ideas about that?
It's possible that Jen McCabe didn't know anything until later in the middle of the night. Maybe that's when they talked about it. Like maybe she knew nothing. And maybe she just left not knowing anything. Or maybe it was like, hey, come here. John got hurt. It was an accident. We're going to try to take care of it. You guys need to go, blah, 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 blah. And then there was more talk after that. I don't think that they are stupid enough to be like, come look at John. Come look and see what bad shape he's in. It may just be like he fell in the garage, whatever in the garage, an accident. We're going to try to figure out a way to blah, 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 blah. I think that happened after most of the kids had left. I think in that house, it's probably easy to pull people to the side and talk to them. It certainly makes sense that, and I've always thought that not everyone in the house knew because it's like, people, true, are not good at keeping secrets unless there's something high stakes. So I don't know, but I think it was we're going to figure out what to do. You guys just get out of here. We'll be in touch kind of situation.
What was the real reason for Brian Higgins going back to the Canton station?
Oof. Well, there's a few possibilities. One is to get a Faraday bag. Another possibility is to listen to police radio traffic. So if the idea is we're going to put John out in the lawn where we could say a plow hit him, we're going to want to hear the plow driver call it in or something. But he wasn't there very long. He was only there for it turns out 8 minutes or something, right? He got there.
Well, he made the phone call, whoever he was talking to, which I'm assuming
outside
was
the
Brian
station,
Albert,
yeah.
at 1:30.
Yeah, and they say that's when he's leaving, but we're not 100% sure of that because that hasn't been put in evidence fully yet. I
don't think Jen McCabe was told. I think they told Matt McCabe.
Yeah, that sounds.
And he told Jen.
That sounds reasonable because he's a dude.
Because he's a dude. I think the dudes told the dudes that were there, and they let them tell their wives what happened.
That makes so much sense. And then Matt told Jen when they got home, and that's why she was pacing around.
But that also explains the incessant calling and texting of John, because last she saw, he was pulled up in front of the house. Where the fuck did he go? So she's calling and she's texting. Matt doesn't tell her until they get home because they've got the kids in the car. Julie Nagel and Sarah are in the car, so he can't say anything to her then. He waits until they get home. He tells her that's why she's pacing at the house. That's why she doesn't ever go to sleep, And that's why she's Googling at 2:27 in the morning, because at that point in time, I've heard it said so many times, why would she be so stupid if she knew to Google? But think about her mindset. If she found out about this at say 2 o'clock in the morning and she's pacing and freaking out, she in no world is Jen McCabe thinking they're ever going to tie me to this. I have nothing, literally nothing to do to this.
So I'm going to help all you guys.
They're not going to look at my phone.
Right.
They're not going to look at my phone.
So whatever I tell you is in service of helping you, not in service of covering up anything for me. I think that telling Matt makes a hell of a lot of sense. And that Brian would have told Nicole after everybody left. And so Jen was able to be cavalier in the car. There was no body on the lawn. I do not believe there was. I mean, Lucky Loughran did not see a body, and the lights on that truck are bright as hell.
And let me tell you, even if Jen's turned around and she's talking to the girls and her...
Which is new detail.
And she's facing away from where John's body would be, the girls would have seen it. Matt would have seen it.
Right.
Come on.
Didn't Julie Nagel say she saw a black blob?
Yeah, that was about 6 feet long.
I just so happened to see a black blob that looked like a big boy.
Yeah, big boy. Big boy. But I look at it this way. I think the men in that area, in that situation, they think that they have everything under control. They are in charge of everything. They're going to tell the ladies later because, the ladies talk. So let's just get our story straight. Then we'll tell our wives. Nicole plays into that perfectly because she's the kind of woman and mom who's like, I wash my hands of this.
Yes.
I'm going to go clean the kitchen.
This is boy stuff.
You do what you need to do.
You're not being sexist. That's true. We heard that.
Make sure
she doesn't clean the
everybody
kitchen.
leaves by like 3 o'clock and make sure they don't mess up my kitchen. I'm going to bed.
Right. No, I think that's right. So I have a question for you. What are you looking forward to seeing tomorrow?
I really, really, really want Alan Jackson to revamp a little bit. I don't necessarily want to see Jen McCabe lose her shit. I want it to be more productive. I know that he's hitting some of his points, but I want him to be a little bit more firm with Jen McCabe and with the judge. We're going to get into this 227 call tomorrow, but I'll say this, with the theory that you've come up with, a lot of this testimony doesn't even mean anything if that's the case.
Right.
I don't even care about Michael Proctor. What I'm looking forward to is the cross of Brian Higgins and Brian Albert.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing that I just want people to remember is that we are fairly certain of their arrival time at 34 Fairview, right? Of Karen and John's arrival time. We know when his last health data event was. His very last health data events didn't necessarily have to be him doing them. They didn't. Right. I mean, there is the whole looking at the screen and thing, but if he's lying on the ground, they can work around that. There's just a lot of play there, and the steps thing. Just think about all that stuff when you actually think about the fact that there was like 9 minutes or something in that period of time. So
Alessi made that point too with Whiffen, where he said, so what you're saying is he was hit by the car and incapacitated right here. Then why is his phone still doing stuff?
Right.
A few minutes later.
Yeah.
Walking.
Yeah.
Like unlocking.
Yes.
Like why? How?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get back together. If nothing else, we'll text tomorrow if we don't get a chance to talk. But something tells me we'll get a chance to talk too. So thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Readathon, Mel.
Fun.
This was a deep dive, and I loved it.
I love your theory. I think you're brilliant.
I'm just thinking of what I would be thinking if I were a juror. So
it makes sense.
Thank you so much.
Partners in Crime Media.